Floating tanks was definitely one of the stranger ideas of the Second World War, but the Allies managed to make this into a reality. In testing on flat water, these vehicles known as DD tanks performed well, although once deployed in combat during the invasion of Normandy, they had mixed results. But were you aware that Germany also employed floating tanks? Meet the Schwimmpanzer. This Third Reich design was much different than the Allied version. So did it actually float, and were they ever used? In today's video, we look at Germany's amphibious tanks of World War II. If you enjoy this video and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It's free and really helps the channel reach more history lovers like you. The German development of a swimming tank came to light with the inevitable need to invade Britain. The headache for German planners was always going to be how to get their heavy weaponry across the channel quickly and en masse. Because Germany hadn't developed landing craft like the Allies later did, the thought to have these tanks float across didn't seem such a bad idea. This plan would have two schools of thought, a swimming tank, the Schwimmpanzer, and another version, the Tauchpanzer. We'll cover this in another video, but it was essentially a submersible tank which would drive along the sea floor. The design would call for the lightest tanks given buoyancy would be the main issue. Designs were drawn up and two tanks chosen. One would be the Panzer II, weighing in at around 9 tons. The other the Panzer 38T, previously a Czechoslovakian design, which weighed around 11 tons. The 38T, of course, also had the ability to hold a larger caliber main gun at 3.7 centimeters compared to the 2 centimeters of the Panzer II. Starting with the Panzer II, the idea was to utilise a huge one-piece pontoon, which had a large space in the middle for the tank. The pontoon had two arms on either side, which allowed it to be raised into the air when on land. The Panzer could then reverse into place and the pontoon lowered around it. 4 lugs mounted onto the small rubber rollers at the top of the tracks were fixed on either side. These lugs allowed the connection between the tank and the pontoon, ensuring it didn't slip through the middle into the water. Once in the water, propellers fixed to the back of the pontoon were connected via the Panzer's engine. Starting up the tank allowed the propellers to move through the water and towards land. Once back ashore, the pontoon would be raised on its arms again, allowing the tank to drive out and into combat. For the 38T, the design was slightly different. Rather than one single large pontoon, the 38T would have several smaller flotation pieces. 2 large pieces fixed on either side, a smaller float fixed to the rear, and a large one fixed to the front. This design was much more like a boat, as you can see by the bow. The floats were fixed to the tank via steel poles to ensure the tank would stay afloat. In addition, the 38T, like the Panzer II, was sealed as much as possible to keep the water from seeping in. The process for this version to make it seaworthy was a lot longer, with each piece added before it could enter the water, but much the same once it did. The tank's own engine powered the propellers, fixed to the rear of the floats, and moved it through the water. On the other side, it could enter combat with the floats attached if necessary, but after a while they would need removal. Testing for both versions was quite successful. They were both able to move through the water and float easily. So much so for the Panzer II version that extra armour was able to be added to the tank. Because conversions to the standard tanks were quite simple, quite a few were manufactured with swimming ability. But the downfall for these strange tanks was the decision to call off the invasion of Britain. With no need to cross the Channel, most if not all of these tanks were sent to the Eastern Front. Some reports suggest that a number were deployed for river crossings, but for the most part, this was either done by way of barges or across engineer-built bridges. It's interesting to think how these tanks may have performed if called upon to invade Britain, but nonetheless, it's an interesting example of another lesser-known vehicle of World War II. Had you ever heard of the German Schwimmpanzer of World War II? What did you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to expand your knowledge and join the growing Premier History community.